Prof, can you do a microphone check? You're muted.
Oh, good afternoon. I can hear you.
Good afternoon, sir. You're welcome.
Thank you. I hope you are well.
Yes, I am, sir. And you too?
I'm doing okay. Thank you.
Great. So we'll just give maybe 1 minute and then we can start. Is that okay by you?
Just let me know whenever it is to go. Yeah.
All right, sir. All right.
The ball is in your court.
All right, sir. Thank you. Okay, I think it's safe to start. It's 1:03 by my time, and I guess they join in, they will just follow us as we go along, I guess. So good morning and good afternoon to all of our participants. So regardless of where you are joining in from, I would like to welcome you to this afternoon session. Thanks for joining us, and I do hope you're having a great time thus far. I think the morning session was excellently delivered. I don't know if you agree with me, but I thought, all the speakers touched on the key points of the PIA, and they delivered excellently, and we are grateful for them for their time. Now, in this afternoon session, Mr. Otome and myself, Obiano Jibokwe, will be moderating this session. Okay, we are glad we've been given this opportunity, and we hope to make this session as engaging and as interesting as the morning session was. So before we start, I would like to remind our participants to utilize the Q&A session, the Q&A window, to note down all questions, all comments, clarifications, and at the end of the presentation, our dear Prof will attend to these questions. So let's scoot over to the safety slide, if you don't mind. Let's have some safety moments before we start. Okay, so I would like to remind everyone that we are in the Ember months, right? And we know that typically for Ember months, it comes with its own issues, right? Kidnapping and, safety concerns and all. And, thus far we've heard of, heart-wrenching stories of, people being kidnapped and, people being robbed and, all manner of things. So we just want to remind you that, again, it's Ember months. Safety should be your watchword, and you should please maintain a low profile as much as possible, minimize, night outings and whatever else, and try to keep as safe as possible. We also want to remind you to be aware of your surroundings, stay focused, try to be very alert, wherever it is you find yourself, so that you can see, quickly pick up on things happening around you. We also want to remind you that we are still in, in the COVID-19 era of the vaccination rates. I know that a lot of people have been vaccinated. However, we just want to remind you that let's keep masking up. Let's do our bit, right? And contribute to saving the humanity. Let's keep masking up, maintain social distance wherever we can, and our own personal hygiene as well. If you need to wash your hands as often as possible, or if you need to sanitize, please do that to keep yourself safe and the people around you, your loved ones as well, to keep them safe. And if you are experiencing any of the symptoms, I would also like to urge you to please self-isolate. It just might not be COVID-19, right? But whatever it is, please self-isolate. Call NCDC if you need to, call the hospital, call the experts so they can take care of you. Please stay away from other people so that we can minimize COVID-19 spread. And I also like to remind you, if you're driving, I would ask you to please look for a safe place, park your car, and then listen in. And perhaps you are on and about multitasking like we do these days. I would also urge you to minimize all distractions. Go to a quiet place if you can, and tune in and listen in, okay? You don't miss any part of this conversation. Now, the Petroleum Act has been cooking for the past decade or more, and it has finally been passed into law. Establishing this law is definitely the dawn of a new era for the upstream, the midstream, and the downstream sector of the oil and gas industry in Nigeria. The delays, the uncertainties, and encountered along the way have been said to have resulted in many lost opportunities. Many investment opportunities were deterred from becoming reality. But here we are. Prior to PIA, there were major regulations used in the industry, of which were outdated and inconsistent with present economic realities, right? But now the PIA has been birthed, and we now have a more robust framework to drive growth in the industry. For this workshop, titled Evaluation of the Fiscal Framework and Provisions of the PIA for Industry Stakeholders, right? We are pleased to have with us a seasoned industry expert to shed light on some aspects of the PIA. We, Otome and myself, and all of SPE Lagos section board members are excited to have the world famous Professor Wumi Iledare join us as our speaker today. Everybody, please give him a round of applause. Now, before he comes up, let me tell you a bit about Professor Iledare. Please, can I? Yes, thank you. So Professor Iledare has over years of technical, professional, and academic experience in analyzing the economic oil and gas industry and oil and gas economy. Currently, he serves as Ghana National Corporation Petroleum Research Chair in Oil and Gas Studies at the University of Cape Coast, Gas Institute, Ghana, and Executive Director Emmanuel Iboga Foundation for Petroleum Industry Economics and Policy Advocacy in Abuja, Nigeria. He is Emeritus Professor of Petroleum Economics from the Louisiana State University, Energy Studies, USA. He is the former Director, SPE African Region. PWI, as he is fondly called, is Chirota and Emmanuel Iboga Distinguished Professor and former Director of Emerald Energy Institute at the University of Port Harcourt in Nigeria. And this was in 2013 to 2019. Okay. So if you move on to the next slide, there are quite a couple of achievements listed, about Professor. So we all recognize him as an expert in the upstream petroleum economics and policy, international petroleum and fiscal systems economics, and geopolitics and economics of oil and gas resources and supply. So Mr. Iledare had his, degree, BSc degree in petroleum engineering with honors from the University of Ibadan. He has an MS in resources from University of Pittsburgh. He has a PhD in economics of energy and mineral resources from West Virginia University. He served on the Nigerian National Assembly Technical Advisory Team on Petroleum Industry Reforms to the Joint Committee on Petroleum Industry Bills. So he's achieved quite a lot, and we have called upon him today to shed light on the fiscal schemes in the PIA. Okay, so everybody, please make welcome Professor. Prof, we are especially thankful to you for your support to the Lagos section. You always honor us whenever we call upon you, regardless of your busy schedule. So you are welcome, sir. And I would like to ask you if you would like to share your slides with us today, sir. Would you like to share your screen for us to see?
Yes, please, if you allow me.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead, sir.
So thank you very much. I hope you can see my slides.
Yes,
Can
so
you see my
slides?
Okay.
Yes, we can. And we can hear you.
Can hear me all right? Well,
yes, sir.
I want to thank you and the SP volunteers that we have in Nigeria. I think Nigerian volunteers can be ranked very high in the SPA globe. I want to congratulate all of you and just appreciate the efforts that you guys put to make sure that we could develop competency in the oil and gas industry in Nigeria. I'm not sure there's anywhere in the world that you can have the aggregation of competent workforce than Nigeria. So my hope for the oil and gas industry in Nigeria is very high. And so thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Thank you for the work you've done in Lagos thus far. Even just starting less than 2 months ago. And I'm also honored for being the secretary of the Nigerian Council. My best wishes are with professionals in Nigeria. Times will be good, just be patient. I remember in 1980 to 1983, in my earlier days in the oil and gas industry, it was bleak. But look at us 40 years ago, SPA in Nigeria is still doing as good as it was doing, and even better because of the dedicated young people that we have. At times, I wish Nigeria would give young people the type of opportunity that SPA in Nigeria has given to our young professionals. And you can see what they are doing. So I compliment all of you. Let me also make a disclaimer. I'm just giving my opinion on PIA. I don't represent anyone, and even though I would like to acknowledge the University of Cape Coast for inviting me to help them build capacity, they are not responsible for whatever I say about the PIA. Neither does the Manuel Egbuga Foundation for Petroleum Industry Advocacy liable for my opinion. Any mistake I make in the interpretation of my understanding of the PIA is a mistake of the head and not of the heart. So I'll do my best to just share my cerebral perspective on the Petroleum Industry Act with the professionals in Nigeria. I was fortunate to have an understanding of the theory of fiscal regime design and to have participated in the development of this predecessor of this PIA. Actually, I worked on this PIA until March 2021, when we had to leave because of some contingencies. And I must recognize the chairman of the team that advised the National Assembly up to March 2021, Engineer Olonshola. I think we did a good job up till March 2021. What we have now is the Petroleum Industry Act. It is the law of the land. And what I'm going to do is not to criticize, but just to over perspective of what is in it and how best we can be able to get the objective. So what I intend to do is to look at the components of PIA. You cannot interpret the fiscal framework without having the understanding of the objective of PIA in the whole and the components of it. I'm not going to dwell on that. I'll just then talk about the components of PIA 2021, the challenges that led to that necessitation of having a PIA, and then what are the expectations that PIA is supposed to deliver. I'll go and talk about the fiscal framework itself, not necessarily dwell on the theory of the framework, but the delivery, the output of that framework in the PIA. And I'll just capture the objective of the PIA, talk about the structure of the PIA fiscal framework and its instruments. And then thereafter, I'll talk about the key fiscal provisions for upstream operations, and then I'll make concluding remark. Basically, if you look at the core principle of PIA, you could see the key interest is to remove uncertainty due to protracted non-overhaul of the legal framework from 1969. It's to remove what I call the governance and fiscal environment that is not supportive for the expansion of the oil and gas industry. In 1986, I made a forecast that the capacity of Nigerian production was 2.5 million barrels per day. Till today, we've not been able to go beyond that, despite the fact that we have 37 billion barrels of oil reserve. Even the US, with about 40 billion barrels of oil, is producing 12.5 million barrels per day. What happened to us? And so the PIA wants to remove that environment that seems to have made it impossible for us to expand the capacity of our production up to 4 million barrels per day, which our 37 billion can support, because there's 90% certainty that we can recover that much under current technology and economic conditions. In addition, the PIA wants to establish good governance, competitiveness, and global best practice, and above all, create an easiness to do business. So the following principles are very important, because anytime you are in a public domain, optimizing mutuality of interest is very important to be able to get anything done. I think the US offers that example with their infrastructure bill, and even back to life bill of President Biden. Only 2 senators out of 50 still standing in the way to be able to get that done. So there are core principles when you are legislating that you must put into PIA in order to get it. The government is interested in early revenue. It is important to have simplicity of administration of the Petroleum Act. It is equity and fairness is very good. What we call adequate reward for a risky investment. And of course, competitiveness, transparency, flexibility, predictability, responsiveness, best practice. All of these are the core principles, which, having been an insider in the formative stage and even towards the end of PIA, all of these principles were put into place to get what we have. Okay, what are the issues that PIA is designed to address? One, declining production, price volatility, revenue shortfall, leakages in the economy, declining reserves. These are things that have to do with revenue. And when it comes to investment and funding, PIA addressed to the best of its ability under the political system, where political expediency takes a center stage, at times at the extent of sacrificing efficiency, effectiveness, equity, and ethics. But we are human, so the PIA cannot be perfect under humanity dispensation. But with what it was able to do, attracting funding, political and forex uncertainty, attractive commercial framework, competitive fiscal terms, infrastructure deficit. These are things that PIA was designed to attend to. And even taking care of systems, structures, people, and tools, it attempted to address governance gap, delivery capacity, transparency, efficiency, technical capacity. And then the policy that has been archaic were also addressed in the Petroleum Industry Act in terms of industry reform, competitive market structure for gas and for oil. Cross-subsidization was addressed, participation expansion, and even revenue distribution. That's why you have the Petroleum Host Community Fund as part of the reform. Yes, over the years, it's really not impossible for you, if you're an industry participant, to see that from the last decade, everything seems to be going in the wrong direction. So fundamentally speaking, PIA is designed to see if there could be reversal in drilling intensity, production and reserves, cost minimization, prices and revenues, gas to power and jobs. The PIA is designed to be able to reverse this against the traffic driving. In terms of competitiveness, and I'm sure you can see my graphs and you are hearing me, Nigerian fiscal regime in terms of attractiveness and competitiveness is stuck in the middle. Is there a way in which PIA implementation can move this circle, from here to here? Sorry. See, you can move this circle to this direction. Can we, the PIA, if implemented properly, bring us to this fourth quadrant where we'll be competitively high and very attractive? And to a large extent, that was the original intention of PIA. So the components of PIA, and I'm going to be watching my time, the governance structure, the separation of the role of a policy institution from a commercial institution, as well as regulatory institutions, is so critical if the fiscal framework is supposed to deliver effectively. And that's what you have in Chapter 1 of the Petroleum Industry Act. The regulators, the commercial, and the policy institution. Then in Chapter 2, you have the licensing, management, and administration, which deal much more with the issuance of license. And then in Chapter 3, you have the Community Trust Fund, which is designed to be able to ensure sustainable intergenerational benefits from operation in Nigeria. Of course, what is important for us today is the fiscal elements of the petroleum industry bill that to a large extent are flexible, effective, and efficient to the best of their ability when human beings design something with so many competing interests to manage. So basically then, the attributes and characteristics and deliverables of PIA is geared towards industry competitiveness and effectiveness. So you have a restructured, rebranded, and rekindled institutions, separation of roles, policy, office of the minister, commercial NNPC limited, regulatory institution, the authority, and the commission. And there's a provision for interaction among these institutions in order to avoid territorial protection. And PIA did very well by making sure there's a provision there to allow for interaction. Again, the value creation, acreage management, and administration system is such that discretionary award of leases is disavowed. No individual can give oil and gas block to anyone as was formerly done. PIA ensured that. Now, implementation is a different ballgame, but the law is there. And the law is also there as to when your terms expire. And that's why the fiscal design is good. What we cannot bet on as of now is those who will implement it, and we can only hope. The fiscal system is attractive, in my opinion, competitive, it is progressive, it is flexible, and one can only hope that what the government has given of you, which we are going to see in a minute, the investor will react kindly to it so as to be able to expand the production capacity. Yes, it is not perfect, but NCDMB is not perfect either, and they are adding value, and that's what we can look for. So the PIA is also looking forward to sharing benefits directly with those communities. And that's a fiscal term that they have there to fund the host community development interest. And how to spend the money is well articulated for the host community. And I think it's a local solution to a local problem that you see with the PIB. I understand the other workshop is talking more about that. And certainly there's transparency, accountability, stability, and sustainability. Listen, I'm a public intellectual, and I do not take delight in saying things just to appease people. I'm hoping that the signals that we are seeing in the implementation of this PIA will be reviewed. I'm not happy with the signals at all, but this is not the essence of this lecture. That I will give in a different forum. So look at it quickly. The objective of PIA framework: 1, encourage investment, balance rewards with risk, enhance revenue for the government. The PIA forward-looking fiscal framework. It is dynamic. It can expand government revenue by expanding output. It is very, very critical of ensuring a fair return for investors, and it is willing to take care of the host communities. It makes the administration a little bit simple because it defines clearly who's responsible for collecting taxes and so on and so forth. And of course, it is keen in promoting equity. I just pray to God that the people that will implement this PIB will have a national interest, dominating more with a posterity mindset and disavowing what I call Esau's mindset. If we do it, this law will actually promote Nigeria to the next level in terms of its industry. We can pause now. Maybe we can just ask for a poll. Oju, I don't know if you have, we have about 4 questions quickly. We have about 5 minutes to look at it and just see what we can see. Oju, thank you very much. So please see what we can do in the next 5 minutes, and then we'll go quickly. Please, can you answer? Nobody has answered yet.
Yeah.
Oju, are they aware?
Yes, we're all encouraged to participate. Please, this is a very key part of the session so that at least we get feedback and Prof can understand the areas to really focus on. So please, we expect people to take part in this first poll, and we have more polls to come.
Thank you. They're answering now, yes. So, how many minutes do we have to continue?
Yeah, I think we can take another 2 minutes, Prof.
Okay, for responses. That's fine. Just be the controller of that. Let me know when you want me to move on. And also, please help me to be able to compile the questions so that you could be the one to ask them on their behalf.
Okay, will do. Okay, we have about 50%. Please, I expect us to hit at least 90% participation in this poll.
Yeah. And I'll just spend 1 or 2 minutes to go through the questions, and then we can continue whenever you are ready.
Please don't be afraid to put an answer. It's anonymous. Just go with your gut feel. Okay. Don't worry, Prof is not going to.
No, I'm not grading it. I
us.
just use it for explain. Yes. So again, public perception is very important. Public perception is very important when there's a law. There's need for public education so that people can be on the same page with the intent of the law. I just happen to be fortunate because the original intent of the law I know, because I was part and parcel of those who designed that intent. So, and that's why I dedicated myself to educate the public on this petroleum industry bill at no charge at times. All right. So I think we can continue now because we have 66%.
Thank you so much, Prof.
So we can end the poll.
I think we can go ahead.
Okay, let me just spend 1 minute to talk about this poll. First, the first answer is not correct because of the word primary and because of the word natural gas development. So the correct answer is actually false, because if you have a statement that is true, if any part of the statement is false, the statement is false. This fiscal framework for the oil, for PIA, is not emphasizing revenue increment from gas development, and that's what is false. Enhancing government revenue is not the primary objective. In fact, if we're really going to look at it critically, encouraging investment is the principal primary reason for the fiscal framework in the PIA. Now, there's no answer directly for the second question. How significant is the delay of passing the bill? Again, it appears we have a unanimous opinion that it has a very high significance. Now, the next question has to do with the minister's optimism. I can lower it down. Please, can you bring it down for me? The Minister of State, can you bring, hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, Prof. There's a bit of a lag,
Okay.
but can you see?
Okay. You know, I can see it now. Said the Minister of State once said passing the PIA is an industry game changer. How likely? Again, the answer is almost about even with respect to highly likely depends on implementation strategy. You can see there's a tie there. So you could see the optimism of the minister is shared, but conditionally, everything depends on implementation strategy. Again, those implementing this PIA understand the public interest to make sure that this thing becomes a game changer. And those who will implement it and lead the institutions must not have what I call ESOS mindset. And the final question, please, the next question, and then we can move on. Moderator. Moderator,
Yes,
okay, move it down. Let's
apologies.
just so that we can. That's okay, please. That's okay. The next one.
Let me see.
Number 4.
Okay.
Doesn't come. I think that number 4 is asking for, I wanted to see which institution.
I think we might need to.
Okay.
Yes, yes. I think from the polls, the commission is favored at 45%.
Yes. Okay. Again, they are, when it comes to the upstream fiscal system and the impact it can have on the oil and gas industry, the commission is the key. Thank you very much. So I can continue. We'll bring another 4 questions in about 10 minutes or 15 minutes. So please, okay. So can we, all right. So we can go to the next Okay, so if you look at the PIA, there's also what I call the model arrangement. Model, that's if you submit bidding for a lease, you have to specify what type of contract model are you attaching to your bid. And of course, you have concessionary, you have contractual. If it is concessionary, it could be sole risk, or it could be joint venture operations with NMPC. In the context of the PIA, anything that has to do with joint venture is between the government and a private individual. That can go on your own. And then, of course, there's going to be marginal field operations, which, of course, I think the PIA is not willing to put a marginal field out for bidding. But of course, they recognize those that were given up before January 2021. Now, if it's contractual, there are two options. You can have a risk service contract and a production sharing contract. The difference between the two is the mode of payment and the participation in the sharing of the goodies. It is important that you could do that. I think the production sharing contract was singled out in the PIA in terms of a defined commercial terms. There are some of us who are of the opinion that this should not have been legislated beyond just saying that if you are going to do PSC, you cannot have a cost recovery limit that is 100%. Neither can you have a profit oil split that is less than different ratio. But for the designer, they've put a PSC important provisions there in the law, which deals with what we call the cost recovery limit. What proportion of your revenue in a particular period can you use to recover your eligible cost? And I think they have specified a cost recovery limit of 70%. That is, you make 100 million in one period, only 70 million can be used to recover your cost. You can carry the remaining cost forward 100%, but you can never use your 100 million to recover the eligible cost. And that's the idea of a cost recovery limit. Not that you will not recover all your costs, but you will recover only, you will use a proportion of your revenue to recover it. They also think it's wise to be able to indicate how you are going to split between the government and you, depending on your cumulative production. The first 50 million, the government is willing to take only 5% of profit oil and profit gas, and so on and so forth. It's important to note that the structure has changed. The structure has changed in the fiscal framework in Nigeria. Currently, we are the single royalty system based on terrain. The PIA has a triple royalty system based on terrain, production, and price. And this is just to create a self-adjusting flexibility to pay as you earn, at the same time enable the government to have a share if there's windfall. The tax structure has also changed from a single tax system that has operated over how many years, called the petroleum profit tax, to a two-tier tax system. This is not a double taxation. This is a dual tax system: corporate income tax and Nigerian hydrocarbon tax. And the difference is the base for doing the calculation and the different rates. Again, if government wants to give incentive for expanding development of petroleum, they can target using Nigerian hydrocarbon tax and still allow for normal payment of taxes. Now, when it comes to incentive, before PIA, incentives in Nigeria were based on investment, which is input oriented. The new dispensation is to reward output. And so tax allowance is now based on output rather than input alone. So these are the instruments that were used in the design of the fiscal framework in the PIA: royalty, tax, and incentive, RTI. Of course, you do have some other notable commercial elements like government's right to participate, cost recovery limit, ring fencing, domestic obligations, capital gains, and other hidden incentives. And of course, the reason is this. The purpose of incentive is to make you do what normally you will not do. I'm sure you can understand what I mean. I used to give incentive to my children. If you get A, you get $10. If you get B, you get $5. If you get C, you pay me. So you could see the government intention is to incentivize investment. Now, if you look at royalty, the PIA moves away from flat single royalty on the basis of terrain. And now they have what we call sliding scale-based royalty. And they design it in such a way that it is not jumping, it is progressive, which simply means they can, when you are in one terrain, depending on the production rate, you pay a certain percentage. When you are in shallow water, up to certain production, you pay a certain royalty percentage. And you could see the departure, the maximum is 15% for onshore, 12.5% for shallow water, and 7.5% for deep water. Cast your mind back to PPT years. Royalty was flat, 20% onshore, 18.5 shallow water up to 100 meters, and so on and so forth. The PIA has changed it. It now has a flexible, progressive royalty system. The beauty, if you see my handwriting, is natural gas. If you are going to produce gas for domestic utilization, the royalty rate is 2.5%. Look at how generous it is, flat. And if you are going to produce for export, 5%. This is more or less the PIA backing the decade of gas mantra of the federal government. They are putting their money where their mouth is. And this is incredibly generous. Now, I departed from this because, and I'm continuing going to be advocating. I was surprised that it truncated the liquid progressive royalty at 7.5% at 50,000. I think that would require some review. I would have expected to increase the volume here to 100,000 barrels per day, and anything greater than 100,000, you put 10%. But like I told you, the stakeholders, when they have access to the government, can lobby and advocate their case. And I think that's what the international company did, because you could see that the royalty scheme is more favorable to PSC deep water than to where you will expect indigenous companies to participate in the future. So there will be room to improve this, but this is what you have now, which is extremely generous. And you can even understand why this is so, because they want to encourage the PSC to be converted to this new project we will see down the road. I've decided to do the model, and you could see, if you look at, I'm going to come up with another something in a moment. But if you look at what happened when you are PPT, you could see the royalty is 1,000, but see where it is gone in PIFLB 2018, and look at the decline in what the government is going to be getting from 1,000 barrels to just 625 if you are producing about 5,000 barrels per day. And then you could see nearly all of them is declining compared to the new PI. So the royalty is very, very progressive. Royalty in itself is regressive, but you can make it less regressive. And that's what PIA has done. And I just had to let you see what will happen with your different production, depending on whether you are looking at the in-between PSC 1993, and you could see the generosity of the new PIA with respect to royalty. And the more you are able to reduce your royalty payment, the more likely is the performance of the investment to be competitive. Because for those of you who did NPV and internal rate of return, the later money that you give to the government is highly penalized when you are scaling it down to today. So what the government has done in reducing royalty is commendable, and they should be applauded. They're actually sacrificing a lot to be able to expand investment in the upstream sector of the economy. Now, they introduced what they call royalty by value. And of course, this is to be able to capture any benefit that is not as a result of investment, like a change in price, sudden change in price, your ability to be able to get additional revenue without additional investment because of the volatility. And so the government has what they call a linearized royalty on a per dollar basis. If the price is below $50, you don't pay royalty by value. But between 50 and 100, you are going to pay 5%, which is about 0.25% per dollar, and so on and so forth. Of course, now, the other instrument is the dual taxes that the government introduced, which is really separating resource tax from corporate income tax. And this is to help the government to be able to target incentive for resource development and expansion. And of course, it is also based on terrain and production. You could see the old asset is 30% if you're onshore, 15% if you are getting a new lease. If you convert, then you are going to get the new taxes. If you are not convert, you are going to stay with PPT, I mean, petroleum profit tax. I personally see excellent incentive taking Nigerian hydrocarbon tax out of deep water. I would have loved to suspend it and have a sunset on it for the sake of the future. But for whatever reason, I think the investors, either because they were paying royalty in deep water now, did not feel that it's right for them to be paying Nigerian hydrocarbon tax. I personally think this is a mistake on behalf of, this is a mistake for the government. Because of, you've seen a situation with the international companies now are moving away from this highly Nigerian hydrocarbon tax environment and going to deep water. So the level playing field is a little bit skewed, but I can only hope that international companies will respond to this generosity of the government. Because highly generous, because now deep water before was paying 50% PPT. Now they are just going to be paying an equivalent of 30%, which will significantly lower the effective tax rate. So what, again, this is not uncommon. I would have just expected the government to put a sunset. Of course, if you don't put a sunset, you cannot just review. You are going to be going through the permit, I mean, the wheel again. All right. So basically, then this is just to compare what was the case under PPT and what was the case, which is some of the things that I've talked about earlier. Again, you could also see the Nigerian hydrocarbon rate, 30% petroleum mining license for onshore and shallow water, for petroleum prospecting license for onshore and shallow water is 15%, which is new assets. And then for marginal field prior to January 2021 is 15%. And then if an existing OML opted out of conversion, then they are going to continue to pay the PTT, petroleum profit tax rate. Quickly, another 5 minutes if something will look at it. Just give me what you think about this. I've spoken about the profit share, and I've spoken about the type of allowances, and I don't know if you can just put on the 4 questions, please. Can you hear me?
Yes, so the poll questions are up now, Prof.
Oh, okay, thank you.
They've been launched, yeah. Okay.
Please just give it a try. First question, PIA offers lower effective royalty and tax rate than PPT Act. You are thinking, no grade though, no grade.
We need. So Prof has given all of us a blanket A.
Yes.
Plus, so please just feel free to respond.
Good. We've got the first try. Excellent.
The results are quite interesting.
well, I'm glad there's participation.
Yes. So we have 1 minute left.
Yes, please.
Let's keep the results coming in.
How many more minutes for the workshop to be over, please?
So we actually have about an hour to go, okay. But if we are able to round up, with people some time back.
Yeah, just let me know when you want me to stop. I'll be glad to stop. So I don't. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. I think we can just look at. Yeah.
Let's end the poll. Okay.
Okay, end it. And then just make sure that you quickly display the answer from now. Let's look at the first one. The PIA offers no effective rate. And I think the answer is true when you look at it from the base value. Flat royalty before was 20%. Now the maximum is 15%, and that's even onshore. So there's a lowering of that effective tax rate. Royalty rate. The same thing with the taxes. I think the majority seems to be right here, about 94%. Now, this is subjective, and I'm not surprised that people think the ultra deep Niger Delta looks to be more prolific than all the other one. And so I think that is probably the way I will rank it myself. Let's look at question number 3 and 4, please. 3 and 4. Are you able to bring the result for 3 and 4?
I'm sharing. Yes. Okay. So maybe I should just read it out. So for
okay, you can
tax
analyze.
allowance, we have 21%, tax credit 21%, and then production allowance is 58%. Nobody picked uplift.
That's good. So what you have in the fiscal PIA is actually production allowance. No room for, the only way you're going to continue to have your investment tax credit is if you don't convert. Again, so we can go on then. And what is the last question?
Okay. So the last question has 4 options, and the winner is competitive and attractive funding for E and P businesses in Nigeria.
Yes. And what is the question? I don't remember the question directly.
Oh, okay. So the question is, in your opinion, which of the following challenges and issues fundamental to the enactment of the PIA 2021 is more than likely to be resolved amicably in the next 5 years?
Yes. What are the other options that we have?
So there are 4 options: declining reserves and production capacity. Second one is competitive and attractive funding for E and P businesses in Nigeria. The third one is transparency and cost efficiency. And the last one is restructured, rekindled, and apolitical NNPC limited with commercial orientation.
Yes, I think competitiveness and the attractiveness will be resolved quicker. Which one is number 2?
So that's number 2. Number 1 is declining reserves and.
No, I'm talking in terms of the vote.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes. Transparency and cost efficiency
is number 2. So you could see that it appears that nobody believed that NNPC Limited will be apolitical, right? In the next 5 years. Yes. All right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Let's continue. And just in your opinion, how many more minutes do I have so that I can? I know that time is important.
I think we still have by the schedule we have an hour left, but
okay.
I mean, yes,
30 minutes so that we can have time for interaction. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Correct. So you can end your sharing results and let me see. Continue. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. All right. So what are the deductions? What are the upstream deductions that we can quickly go through? Sorry. I mean, the terms that I like is what they call wholly, reasonably, exclusively necessary. It's called WREN, W-R-E-N. It looks objective, but it's in the law. And it's the FRS that would determine, oh, you know what, I didn't remember to connect my computer back. Yes. Wow. Almost. Sorry, gentlemen. All right. Please, can you still see my slide? Hello?
Yes, you can quiz.
Okay, and you can hear me. Take it out. Okay, so what happened is that—
Prof, we can see your slide. Yes, okay. We can see your slide, but your audio was a bit blurry for a moment, yeah.
Okay, well, is it better now? Okay. No, I was saying that it is the Federal Inland Revenue Service that will determine whether your expenses that are allowable are wholly, W-O-L-L-Y, whether they are reasonably, exclusively, and necessarily incurred for upstream petroleum operations. One is just afraid that this may lead to a lot of litigations going back and forth with FRS. And I'm only hoping that the FRS executives will not have ESOS mindset, E-S-A-U-S, Esau in the Bible. Because when you have Esau's mindset, you don't think about the future. And I think in our day, we try to strike this out over and over again, because it is going to be very subjective. However, it is the law now, and it's putting the onus on the operators to make sure that they spend any money that is to be deductible, it must be wholly, reasonably, exclusively, necessarily incurred. That's a big burden. But some of them will be a lot easier. It's not going to be difficult for your rent and royalty incurred to be deductible. It is not going to be difficult also to deduct whatever amount that is approved by the commission for the purpose of decommissioning and abandonment. You know, because you have to escrow money on an annual basis or periodic basis in order to be able to deduct that. Somebody is raising his hand. I don't know if that is allowed. Ejiro Desmond Ugbodu is raising his hand. But what I would really prefer is to finish my lecture and then people can ask questions for clarity. That would be, allow things to flow well. Then of course, the cost of geology and geophysical data and geochemical data will be allowed to be deducted for Nigerian hydrocarbon tax calculation. It is important to mention quickly that Nigerian hydrocarbon tax is not deductible in the calculation of your SITA. You have to follow the SITA tax code to know what is deductible for SITA and what is not deductible. This is just with respect to Nigerian hydrocarbon tax. The contribution to host community fund is also deductible. Levies, stamp duties, and fees paid to federal government, state government, and local government are deductible. Gas reinjection costs are also deductible. So again, the tax code will specifically tell you this, and of course that's why you have tax accountants and lawyers. The PA is specific about the upstream costs that you cannot disallow. That are disallowed, costs that you cannot deduct. Disbursement of expenses not rent incurred. Remember what rent is? Wholly, reasonable, necessarily incurred. If you get gas flaring penalty, you cannot deduct it. Tax paid with respect to net contract agreement, you can deduct. So you need a tax accountant in your business to be able to know what you can deduct or not deduct, because FRS will not allow you. Again, I have problem when you giving an incentive to a regulatory agency to keep a percentage of whatever it collected. It can create abuse because they are thinking, we call it agency theory in economics, where the manager of a firm protects his own interest first before the stakeholders. I think these are some of the things that needs to be, I call it regulatory capture or institutional capture. So this rent thing needs to be, let me remind you again what rent is. Wholly, exclusively, and necessarily incurred. Necessarily, exclusively, and necessarily incurred. That's what rent is. And you must be able to show that you spend that money for upstream operation. Now, it is not that the government is not supporting efforts. And that's why you have a capital allowance that is allowed for host community, for hydrocarbon tax. It is annualized. You can claim it in full. And they have different type of capital expenses that will qualify, and they are listed in the PIA. So you need to study them. Now, government then in the PIA introduced what they call the cost recovery to price ratio. And they put it at 35%. So at every particular point in time, you can only use 65% of your revenue, just like the PSC cost recovery limit in one way or the other. This is more or less to allow for cost efficiency. So if your capital allowance and operating costs can be claimed up to this limit, if your entitled cost exceeded this limit, you are not going to take it, you are going to have to carry it forward. The industry did not really like this, but like I told you, this is a give and take world. I think the industry, in my opinion, I told you I'm a public intellectual. I'm not owned by the industry. I'm not owned by the government, and I'm not owned by the public. I am more or less a public educator, telling it as, in fact, my name is really Professor of what ought to be. So I'll tell it as it is. I think the industry did not like this, but they let go because they've gotten quite a lot with this PIA. And again, that's where knowledge is power. When you are dealing with a soccer competitor, you cannot field your second 11. You must always put your first 11 forward. And I have the privilege to have interacted with the with the representatives of the International Oil Company, what they call the OPTS. They have dedicated, brilliant staff that are looking at the reward, and they negotiate fiercely, competitively, and with respect to maximizing the benefits of their investment. And there's nothing wrong with that. They didn't like this. I personally think this is a little bit outrageous, but you can't blame government looking at what they surrender. The reason why the government wanted royalty is because of the cost control component that they don't have power to. And that's why they peg it. Yes, you will get your cost, but you have to pay Nigerian hydrocarbon tax for about 35% of your revenue. Please, you have time to, again, the production allowance concept is brilliant as well, because you want to grow your capacity. So it's a situation in which the government gives you opportunity to expand your capacity and then give you a fixed deduction between the lowest of 20% of the selling price and $2.50 per barrel for all the acreages that are converted to these new physical terms. If there are new projects, then the government is giving you opportunity to take, before you calculate your taxes, 20% of the fiscal price of oil and $8 per barrel, whichever is the lowest. For example, if the price is $100 per barrel, then 20% of $100 is $5. That's what you are going to take. And I think the government is saying that 50 million, shallow water 100 million, you are entitled to this. Yes. And I think this is after you go beyond $50, and then you have a fixed $4 per barrel, because the government wants you to continue to produce. And at that time, maybe your operating cost per unit, because of the price of oil, may not be optimized in terms of your revenue. Government says, okay, I'll let go of $4 per barrel from what you have paid on taxes. Of course, this is then giving you the categorization of the production allowance. Again, it is a minimum of one and the other. Government really wants to just, again, competitiveness and attractiveness is key. If you look at the African continent, and look at the coast along the African coast, you will see that nearly every country is producing oil, and they are where we were about 60 years ago. And so the tendency is for them to have a more attractive and receptive fiscal regime, and that's what government has to stay competitive. Again, it is important now to go to company income tax. Hydrocarbon tax is not deductible, and any company intending to be involved in more than one stream shall use separate company for each stream. So the upstream that is vertically integrated, you will pay corporate income tax for your upstream operation, corporate income tax for your midstream operation. There is no consolidation. So, and that must be taken care of. There must be a representative, like look at my old companies now. You have a company that's dedicated to gas. That gas company will pay something. You have a company that's dedicated to upstream. That will pay their own corporate income tax. And you have, now, I must confess to you that I wish the corporate income tax were deductible. I argued and argued and argued. That would have made it a lot easier for consolidation to be possible, but it is not allowed. So you have to look at section 24 of CETA to be able to follow the expenses that are deductible if you're in upstream operations. Again, you have other sections that are not going to be deductible. The corporate income tax deductions are different from the Nigerian hydrocarbon tax deduction. It is important then when you are going to calculate your Nigerian hydrocarbon tax to understand the difference between adjusted profit, assessable profit, chargeable profit, and chargeable tax. Profit after deduction of expenses that are only reasonably and exclusively necessarily incurred will lead you to an adjusted profit. Now, when you then adjusted profit after deduction of losses incurred in any previous accounting period, that will give you assessable profit. And then your assessable profit after deduction of capital allowance and production allowance will give you a chargeable profit. And that's what you are going to use to calculate your chargeable tax, which is ranging from 15% to 30%. This is hydrocarbon tax calculation. And then, of course, you have the model to be able to help you. This is from my friends. I'll make reference to them. Ascension Consultancy Group, who made some of this thing available to me, and the Biobaku, a law firm. Again, your allowable cost is defined in section 263. You take your geological data cost out, and then you have your adjusted profit. Then do you have any losses that you brought forward? You deduct it, then you have your assessable profit. And then you go to a fifth schedule and look at what are your capital allowance calculation. You take it out, and then you get your, you then take a total deduction from revenue. Of course, this is where now you have to incorporate whether your total deduction from your revenue is lower than 65% of the cost ratio, because that's what you can use. Then you have your unrestricted allowable that you brought forward, and then of course, you can then subtract your rent, your royalty, your host community, and then you have your assessable profit, which now you can tax. Again, how do you file your returns? You go to section, if you go to, let's see, this section now, where you can file your return, I think it's 277 and 280, will be able to give you the process whereby you can file your return. And the period, first, your hydrocarbon tax is on the basis of terrain, and you must pay attention to that. You cannot consolidate it. You can consolidate within terrain, but you cannot consolidate across terrain. Now, if you go then to look at a particular provisions that has given a wrong interpretation, is the share of profit oil and profit gas for NMPC as management fee and frontier fund. There's a conflicting section that needs to be rationalized. The first time about, there was no mentioning of management fee. But then when you come to NMPC limited component, the management fee was incorporated. I think it's probably as a result of cut and paste. But then, irrespective of the reason, let's look at the meaning of that frontier exploration. And there are some people who are arguing that with this energy transition, why would government be looking for oil and gas? Listen, I'm speaking next tomorrow to the Energy Commission in Nigeria on the strategy for Nigeria in response to energy transition. There's no path to carbon zero in 2050 without oil and gas. Because we have a trilemma problem that are linked together, and solving one without addressing the other two is going to be catastrophic, in my opinion. So government is not doing anything wrong in wanting to make sure that we continue to look for oil and gas to meet the economic need, energy need, and sustainable life that oil brought to bear, until we can find an energy source that will maintain that life, even as we concentrate on lowering global warming. The energy trilemma problem is simply defined in terms of energy poverty, carbon emission, and economic inequity. And the strategy is not out of place for the government to want to explore frontier business. And so they've created this fund, which will be 30% share of profit oil and profit gas, which is literally government money for PSC contract agreement. Now, but when NMPC Limited becomes a liability company, the government reserves the right, being the current owner, 100% owner of NMPC Limited, to transfer this money. It may be debatable, but as we have it today, until it is challenged, there's nothing you can do. It is a law. Now, the interpretation of the implementation of this fund is conjectural. He who pays the piper dictates the tune. And I just wish that political expediency will not drive the allocation of this fund. And that's why I gave you the quiz earlier. If you look at the geological basin in Nigeria, there's nothing in PIA that gave any preference to any basin. And it is what I call the stupidity of the mindset for anybody to insinuate that a particular basin structure would be favored, because the commission has a say as to how this frontier fund is spent, not just NMPC. And the National Assembly must appropriate the spending of this money as well. And looking at the prolificity of the geological basin in Nigeria, will be driving force as to where government within the current dispensation is going to optimally allocate which basin should run at one time or the other. I hope I can pause again and take a deep water while my Oh, I think you must have shown this one before. I think we've already done this. I think we did this earlier. That must be a mistake on my part. I think we've answered this. All right.
We have.
So then which one did we miss? Must have been, there must be another one, but that's okay. I thought you have that other one. Oh.
Yes, we actually have another.
Sorry, I have another one, but that's okay. That's okay. It was not sent to you. Because there are three slides that I sent to you that have these questions. Maybe they were duplicated. Anyway, so that we can have enough time, let me conclude. First, it's been a pleasure for the opportunity to share my thoughts with you. Second, these are my personal opinion, and I welcome any other opinion with respect to the interpretation. The only important thing, though, that you will know is that you do not have many emeritus professor in this subject matter, neither do you have a distinguished professor in this subject matter. In that case, maybe my opinion has a lot of weight, but it is still an opinion. Despite it may be 90% in weight, but it is still an opinion. Nobody can say somebody else's opinion is wrong. But somebody can say that somebody's thinking is woolly and not strategic. So let me conclude by saying the fiscal framework and provision in the Petroleum Industry Act is generous to a fault, especially in the deep water terrain. So limited investment flow no longer triggered by unattractive fiscal terms. What probably can hinder the positive response to these generous fiscal terms is ineffective governance, inefficient governance, and inequitable governance of the institutions. And that's why I said earlier, I don't like the signals that I see towards implementing this favorably to a large extent, Petroleum Industry Act. The inequity aspect of institutional governance is when you leave competence for incompetence because of political expediency. The government must be careful. And a public intellectual like myself can say it because the oil that the dog has is enough to fry the dog. The royalty scheme in the PIA is less regressive and very favorable to gas development for domestic market. And I was speaking a few days ago to the diaspora investors, and where I challenged them, they have reason now to bring money from abroad to invest to develop gas in Nigeria. The market is there. Gas supply creates its own demand. And the funding of the midstream for government to participate and create less unfavorable environment is very key to gas development. And the PIA has that disposition. You see, another important thing that is very keen is the output-based incentive. It's also generous. Of course, the government will be happy. They don't want to become dictatorial to encourage conversion of license. But of course, the government made a mistake in 2016 and 2016 and even 2018 when they began to renew licenses that would have expired. Again, that's my problem. Nigeria has no problem developing policies that are proactive. Nigeria has competent mindset to develop framework. They just allow political expediency to implement these frameworks badly. Why will you renew licenses when you are about to reform the industry. That will make conversion more difficult because of the stabilization clause and so on. So you just have to wait until the terms, the list expires. Of course, I don't have a crystal ball. Don't get me wrong. Remember, I'm just saying what ought to be. They should have not renewed any license until the reform process is completed. Listen, the fact that you have no Nigerian hydrocarbon tax for deep water, offshore, and natural gas has implication. Because now you have to think in terms of 13% derivation fund. What is it going to be tied to? Is it going to be Nigerian hydrocarbon tax plus corporate income tax? Why will you let some state take corporate income tax for upstream petroleum and don't take it for mining gold or for even brewing beer or for even having coke? So those are issues. So it limits the flexibility of the act for future unpredictability without having a sunset for Nigerian hydrocarbon. In fact, I foresee the same thing that happened for 100% cost recovery limit in the PSC 1993 appling in 2001. But these are amendable portion. I will have sunset 0% deep water hydrocarbon tax and sunset 0% hydrocarbon tax on natural gas. See, I have an example. Louisiana created a law to allow horizontal drilling for gas in Louisiana several years ago. Nobody thought that shale development will use horizontal technology. And by the time horizontal technology came into being, Louisiana is losing severance tax and royalty because of that law. I would have expected a sunset. I didn't have it. Well, the PSC commercial term specification in the law is questionable, but seems protective. I will have not legislated any model in the law. And I would not have dictated to NMPC Limited how to finance its business outside the law. I take exception in giving a tax incentive to a corporation to construct road. That is not the purpose of incentive. The incentive is for you to expand your business to such an extent that the government can benefit a lot more from your expansion of business. Also, those are just my conclusion with PIA. It is not a perfect bill, but it is a good bill. And I will not sacrifice a good bill on the platform of a perfect bill that can never pass in National Assembly. So let us take this PIA. Let us look at this, some comments that I make here and there. I'm sure you expected those comments. Being who I am. But kudos to the president and his team for pushing through the National Assembly this executive bill. And for the National Assembly, I commend them as well. I wish they had allowed us to continue to advise them till the finish line. Perhaps we will have gotten a better bill. Thank you for listening. And I must acknowledge my two friends. You can see them here. First, Benga is the one who allowed me to make this presentation to a group of people before, and also the tax regulation ascension for allowing me to use some of the ideas that we share together in a platform. By the way, it's only Benga Biobaku and Co that ever pay me for public intellectual display like this. Thank you very much, and I'm open to your questions.
Prof, Thank you so much. I think, you know, I was about to clap, but I would have disrupted the, you know, your final words. And I'm sure people are clapping wherever they are. Excellent and very insightful and informative session with you. It's always an honor to you know, listen to you and listen to your opinions. And you have really done a lot in the industry to shape you know, shape it to where it is today. So thank you for that as well. In fact, I think the poll questions that you provided did a lot of justice and answered a lot of questions that you know, many of us on the call would have wanted to pen down. But I think there are still a few questions that have been put on the chat. So I will just quickly read them out. So the first question is with respect to, let me scroll up, to the cost price limit of 65% versus the 70% cost recovery that I think you spoke about when we're talking about the production sharing contracts. So are they separate issues? So that's the cost price limit and the cost recovery.
Well, thank you for your question. The 70% cost recovery limit is with respect to PSC to calculate your profit oil and profit gas. The 70% limit will help you to determine what you are going to pay taxes on. Then when you are coming to calculate your Nigerian hydrocarbon tax, that's where the 60% cost price ratio comes in. So they have two different impacts. Because take, for example, 70-30, the government is giving you 95% in your cumulative 95% of 30 and keeping 5%. So that 95% of 30 is what you are going to import as literally your taxable income. And now when you're about to deduct that, then you put your own cost to be able to deduct it. Again, the PSC calculation for taxes in Nigeria is a little bit complex. What I would have loved to recommend is that you don't share the profit oil and profit gas until your net present value, I mean, your net cash flow have been calculated. You will have applied the 65 ratio and then get what you are going to share. But Nigeria is a little bit different from other places. So, but they are two different, they are more or less applied for two different things.
Thanks, Prof, for that. I think one thing that came out from, or has come out from the discussions today is, as we implement this PIA, there will be room for amendments, hopefully. So, you know, there will be improvement as we operationalize. There's another question which talks about the royalty. So the question is, could you please elaborate on when oil companies should implement the royalty by volume as against royalty by price when calculating monthly oil royalties to be remitted?
First, there are two things. Both of them are applicable. The only caveat for the royalty by value is the price of oil. The royalty by value applies when the price of oil is more than $50 per barrel. How you determine the barrel will be in the purview of the regulatory commission. No, and since they are just percentage and percentage, all you need to do is to add, if there's a percentage that is by value, you add it. However, the royalty by value is dedicated to sovereign wealth fund. So it has to be calculated separately. So for example, if the price is $100, then the royalty by value is 2.5%. So 2.5% of my gross production or gross revenue will be given to the sovereign wealth fund. Whereas if that my production is commanding for 12.5%, remember it's progressive for volume. The first tranche of 5,000 will be 5%. The next tranche of 5,000 will be 7.5%. And anything above is what the 15% we apply to, if I'm not wrong. So you are going to have an effective royalty rate that you are going to multiply to be able to get you or something. Listen, I have an upstream petroleum economic course that over 1,000 people have attended in Nigeria. For those who have this type of question, feel free. Sometimes first quarter of next year, we are going to show how to calculate some of these things in an upstream petroleum economic course. Well, that's the way it's going to be. And I think I saw another question now that we're talking about royalty. The PIA has no special fiscal framework for marginal field. However, if there's no conversion, you will continue to operate the old one until that marginal field expires, if it occurs before January 21. Any other marginal field after January 21 will follow this same royalty. Because I saw a question on that, whether the 2.5% will continue to operate. I think if the old law is allowed for deep water, I think the marginal field people can continue. But when that field terms expire, and for those that the term has expired, you need prayers.
Okay, Prof. Thank you so much.
So if I were in charge of the commission, you actually need fasting with it.
Okay,
because you have so many people that are not paying royalty and taxes to the government. They need to go after them.
Yeah, so in fact, very interesting views and yeah, very interesting views. I think another very interesting question is around, you know, are we an investment destination of choice by virtue of the PIA? So is the PIA fiscal regime competitive enough when we compare it to other destinations like Ghana, Angola, and other countries?
Excellent question. But let me blow the horns of Nigeria, because I happen to be fortunate to have been to, can you still hear me?
Yes, yes,
okay.
Loud and clear.
Listen, let me say it without missing word. In Africa today, there's no better place to do business in oil and gas than Nigeria. One, you have the resources, especially gas. And now that gas is transitional fuel, this fiscal regime is encouraging. Two, you have human capital that compares to anywhere in the world. And I live in the US for nearly 40-something years. Three, you have a friendly environment where nearly everybody that got to the top of their career in international company in those days passed through Nigeria. And it's not because I'm Nigerian by blood. No. If I just said there's no better place to be for me than Nigeria. The only reason that we are not going to be the destination of choice is because of our political expediency and ethos mindset. If only the perception of the governance of Nigerian oil industry was what it used to be, why will anybody go to anywhere where the likelihood of finding a barrel of oil is significantly lower than where it has been tested? And this is what PIA is trying to correct. Public perception of the oil and gas industry in Nigeria is too low because of too much emphasis on political expediency. If we remove that, in fact, even the diaspora people that have Nigerian blood, they have enough money. my friends, this is just an opinion, a passionate one for that matter.
Prof, we appreciate your passion, and I think for a lot of people dialing in from diaspora, please take note of what Prof has said. You know, the PIA is unlocking a lot of opportunities here. So come back home. So Prof, another question is, how objective are REN expenses, seeing that it contributes largely to the incentives that businesses can get, and how will they be defined?
Well, you know, I mentioned that when I was speaking. The definition is very subjective. And then we just need to hope that FRS operators, and I'm going to say it as it is, do not have a ESOS mindset where they are just looking at now, and recognize that they are just, the FRS is like the referee on the soccer field. Government is team A, investors are members of team B, and you are the referee. Ethics, efficiency, effectiveness, and equity is the driver of a professional. You don't compromise in favor of A or B or C. You do your work with professional ethics at its highest bar. That's my opinion. And that's why we are fortunate that we've trained competent workforce with posterity in view that we need to engage. You have some of these agencies of the government that never advertise because the salary is commendable. And at the end, they end up increasing the cost of doing business in Nigeria. And that's what I mean by equity. You cannot leave the competence for the incompetent. The competent for the incompetent. That's inequitable. Every professional position must be out for competition. And that's what Nigeria needs to continue to do for the sake of the future. Stop plugging in people because they are politically connected. Otherwise, this PIA is just going to be a child play. If you're going to be doing business as usual, I want to be careful and not say anything that will put SP in trouble. When I talk about more advocacy group, you will see what I mean. We need to think more about the future, and it begins with hiring competent people at the low cadre of this business. Not people who just come to the office, cross their legs, and not add any value. That will make the PIA irrelevant.
Thank you, Prof. Thanks for that. Yeah, I think some other interesting questions around our energy requirements. And if I'm to phrase this a bit differently, I would say, first of all, what is the governing philosophy of the PIA? And how long can we rely on fossil fuels to cater for our energy needs? And then how do we relate the PIA to the energy transition initiative?
Thank you. First of all, I think the government has energy transition in mind with the extremely favorable fiscal regime for gas development. So, because even though gas is not considered to be zero carbon emission fuel. It is a globally acceptable fossil fuel as a transitional fuel. And with advancement in technology, you can even reduce the emission from natural gas utilization further. So government is aware of energy transition. The other thing that goes with the government, which actually complements the PIA, is what just came out of COP26. Because they are thought that they will just bring an end to petroleum, including gas like that. So there's a breathing space. Listen, moving from one energy source to another takes years. And it is not the same year from developed economy and underdeveloped economy, especially when the emissions of carbon is not the same. So I do not see fossil fuel going outside of Nigeria energy supply mix quickly. Perhaps if we think correctly, we must diversify our economy so as not to depend on oil, but income that is generated as a result of using oil as an input of production. Petrochemicals, fertilizers, refinery complexes, and others that are things you can use petroleum, liquid petroleum for. Interestingly too, nobody stops you from developing industrial park based on natural gas and even create what I call carbon storage technology. I think Saudi Arabia call it carbon economy. Near you, where you can capture the emissions from your industrial park and use it for something else. So Nigeria must strategically position itself to use its gas to expand its economy and build technology that can even make petroleum less dangerous to the environment. And the only problem is with respect to transportation. In fact, all this noise about displacing petroleum is with respect to transportation and use. Nobody's talking about petroleum for chemical. Look at this computer we are using. If you decompose it, a great proportion is because of petroleum. Even hydrogen is not necessarily cleaner than the use of natural gas. I wouldn't panic at all. I wouldn't panic. I would expect the government to look at the Energy Council in Nigeria, look at the Energy Commission in Nigeria, rebrand them, rekindle them, and restructure them so that energy transition will be part of their duty. By the way, I'm too old to participate. I'm just saying, look for these young, competent, intellectually drilling young people in Nigeria. There are many of them. Stop them from going. I'm not saying you should, when I say stop them, I'm not saying that you should restrict their movement. I'm saying incentivize them to stay back in Nigeria, give them responsibility and pay them adequately. They will solve Nigerian problem easily. I hate to give my example. Somebody incentivized me to come to Nigeria, and God in his kindness will bless his family. His name is Dr. Emmanuel Eboga. He puts his own money down to take me off my seat in Nigeria. And in 5 years, we graduated 90 people with Master of Science in Petroleum Economics and Energy Economics, 25 Doctor of Philosophy in Petroleum Economics and Energy Economics. If you put them in key position in Nigeria, they will deliver because they went through fire and they quit. So let the government incentivize people to begin to reverse their trip back to Nigeria, and they will solve the problem. By the way, Nigeria allowed Ghana to steal me. I'm a nomadic professor adding value where I'm called to add value. I'm sorry.
No problem, Prof. I think, you know, I know we can go on and on and on, and there's so much value from these conversations we're having. But because of time, we would have to round up in a few minutes. But thank you so much for making our time to be here. I think I'll just hand over to Tunde Kuku to just give us a vote of thanks and take the rest of the session. Thank you so much, Prof. And it's a privilege to have sat beside you virtually.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to enjoy myself as well. Thank you.
Wow, it's been a very, very interesting conversation having Prof. Prof, that was an excellent delivery. You actually did justice to the topic, and you made the webinar a great success. I want to say thank you, Prof, on behalf of the Society of Petroleum Engineers. We really appreciate your time, your contribution, the insights and the perspectives you gave to the subject. In fact, we understand the PIA better than before now. And all we have to say is to say thank you. We didn't take this, and we don't want to take this for granted. We know you are one of us. However, I was just chatting with someone while the presentation was going on, and the person told me that if we had to pay for this session, I'm sure most of us won't be able to afford it. So I want to say thank you once again, Prof, and we really appreciate it. I also want to thank all our participants that have actually spent time listening, participating, interacting, adding questions. We really appreciate everything you've done and all you have put together to make this event a success. For the team that actually made it happen, I want to say thank you. All the board members for SP Lagos session, the special project team members that made it happen, we want to say thank you. I also want to use this opportunity by way of announcement. We realize we have a number of persons who are really not members of SPE. I want to let you know that we are open and we are available. We are willing to have you come on board. If you want to join SPE by way of registration or renew your membership that has elapsed, you can reach any of our officers whose details are already displayed on the screen, and I'm sure they'll be willing and happy to assist you. For more information about the benefits of SP, you can have that also on that link. I also want to let you know that we have a lot of fantastic programs that are lined up for the year. The next one is the beach cleanup and sensitization outreach that is happening a few days from now. It's at Elegushi Beach. Do follow us on our social media pages to see more about all of these events. We also have a student graduation ceremony that is planned for December 4th, and a spectacular hangout for SP members. And that's planned for December 12th at the location somewhere in Lekki Phase 1 up with the Recreation Center. Then we have another study group, which is for personal finance study group. Basically, it's another great event that you don't want to miss. That event is happening on the 16th of December. These are just some of the key activities that we have lined up. Do endeavor to follow our social media pages and to get to see more of what we're doing. This is just the beginning of the topical symposiums that we've had. We are planning for the body, and we still have a lot of them lined up. We know that when we call you, you'll be available, you'll be willing to join us. Once again, I want to say thank you to everyone for giving us your time and being attentive. We look forward to another opportunity where we'll have you to join us on our events. Thank you once again, and let's have a wonderful evening. Otome, back to you. Otome, you can just round up. We're done with the vote of thanks.
Oh, sorry, apologies. So thank you everyone for coming once again, and please stay safe, drive home safely, and we'll see you at the next event. Thank you.